So Lance Henriksen, Tony Todd, James Earl Jones, Burt Young, and star Thomas Ian Griffith come together in this lesser-known early 90s action thriller, Excessive Force. Chicago cop Terry McCain is intent on bringing down the DeMarco crime family, but when $3 million disappears during the recent drug bust, boss Sal DeMarco begins laying waste to McCain's CPD brethren to recover his stolen money. However, after being unable to exact his revenge, McCain finds himself framed for DeMarco's murder anyway, and begins to suspect a larger conspiracy of corruption within the police force. Now with loyalties uncertain and the danger closing in upon him, Terry McCain is required to use excessive force to survive this deadly game of betrayal and deceit. So I believe many of you would know Thomas Ian Griffith from his villainous turns in either The Karate Kid Part 3 or John Carpenter's Vampires, but in between those two films, Griffith had a fairly low-profile action movie career, and in the same year they gave us new releases from Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Van Damme in the forms of Cliffhanger, Last Action Hero, and Hard Target. New Line Cinema attempted to launch Griffith as their own sort of studio-marketed star in the same vein as what Warner Brothers Pictures did with Steven Seagal, but being released in a only reported number of 501 theaters, garnering only $1.15 million at the box office before getting a sort of straight-to-video release, really didn't get the proper push it needed to really make Griffith into a high-profile mainstream star. And from what work I've seen of him, especially with this film, I definitely believe that Thomas Ian Griffith deserved a whole lot better than what New Line Cinema could muster up for this release of the film, because there is a lot of high quality on display on screen with this film, that it does look like a theatrically released film in many different ways, especially with the talent that's on screen and just everything that is done with the direction and cinematography. Everything with this film definitely screams this is a theatrically released film that just didn't get much of a push from New Line Cinema for whatever reason. But it's very interesting to note that this film was also written by Thomas Ian Griffith, that he has the sole screenwriting credit, and don't let that detract you. Don't go off and think like this is sort of like a Sylvester Stallone action vehicle where he kind of takes over the reins and starts meddling with the script. Thomas Ian Griffith puts together a very solid script in this film that, even though it's stuff you've seen before in the genre, it's nothing that's all that gonna rock the world or anything. It's not really going to jump out at you as like, this is something that's completely different or it's a completely new take, whatnot, but there's always a good way to present very familiar type of material, stuff that you've seen in different action movies but put in a different light or whatnot. Put forth by different actors with different complexities and dynamics for their characters, and overall put together in a very good package by a capable director of John Hess, who doesn't have a whole lot of notable credits to his name, but the fact that this film comes out looking as good as it does is probably a lot due to his direction. And you talk about the actor of Thomas Ian Griffith here, and that he is very charismatic, that if you've seen The Karate Kid Part 3, you'll know that he was the best thing about that movie because he was so charismatic and lively and brought so much to that role, and he brings so much to the role of Terry McCain here because he very much fits in that action film star role, that he has a lot of charisma and wit, a little bit of humor. He's a very relatable type of character that we see in so many instances throughout this whole film, because he also has fantastic chemistry with everyone he has to work opposite in this film. This fantastic cast of Lance Henriksen and Tony Todd, James Earl Jones, everyone he works opposite. It's beautiful chemistry he has with everyone. It just clicks off so very easily for him, and just brings so many different qualities and depth and dimension to this role, because he's a very versatile actor. They can do a lot of different things and bring a lot of different qualities to a single character here, that obviously he is a tough Chicago cop, so you see a lot of hardened qualities and determination in him, trying to go ahead and shake down the mob and shake up corruption and just try to bring down this whole sort of thing that's going on throughout the whole film of people shooting things up and killing cops and all this type of stuff, framing people for murder. It's a lot of different stuff that this character has to go through, a lot of different emotional states in this film, between that rugged and gritty determination he has early on, trying to get to the truth after trying to chip away at the DeMarco family for so many years, and now going on this whole thing of people betraying him and learning about all these different corruptions and conspiracies going around. It's a very interesting role that he has to take on, that just obviously written to his strengths, which is a lot of different things. He's a very dynamic actor that just brings all the emotional qualities very well to the forefront of this character of Terry McCain. And you even get certain scenes where he's trying to reconnect with his ex-wife, and it really kind of shows a little bit of an emotional romantic spark that really just adds a further depth and dimension to this character overall, that you see that this is a guy that does have certain sorrows. He has certain things that he's kind of wearing over, and various other things are just kind of pulling and pushing at his soul and his heart and everything. And just, it's very interesting how Thomas Ian Griffith so easily brings forth all these fantastic qualities in these roles and everything, that if you have a lesser actor, the whole thing just falls flat. But because he is such a very talented actor, it brings so much to the role that just holds it up on such a great level that you don't feel like this is a film with a great supporting cast that's just trying to make the lead star kind of look better by association. This is a very talented actor supported by a great cast. And because Thomas Ian Griffith is a trained martial artist in Kempo Karate, Taekwondo, and kickboxing, you get to see him throw a lot of very high roundhouse kicks in this film, and shows off that he is a very capable physical actor, taking on a lot of stunts, and just great seeing a guy, big, tall, lanky guy, throwing some really good fucking roundhouses and just kicking the shit out of people. It's very fun watching him do this stuff in the film, and just like it adds a different flavor to it. Like a lot of the Seagal and Van Damme flicks that were coming out at the time is very much tapping into that sort of thing and utilizing Griffith's own natural talents in that field to add something more to the film, whereas some of his other action films really don't take use of that. And that's a very negative thing I put against some of those films, that they really didn't utilize that quality that he has. That makes this film much more special in my view. But Thomas Ian Griffith is supported by a great cast, like I said. Lance Henriksen, any genre fan of sci-fi and horror absolutely knows Lance Henriksen and knows how good of an actor he can be when he gets a good project to go forth in, and he does a great job in this film. I really enjoy what he does in a role that usually is fairly cliched and typical with the sort of police captain, but he does, his approach, the whole way the character is written and everything he does with it is a nice fresh turn on that whole thing, where yeah, there are times where he's chewing out McCain for doing things that are making him look bad. They're putting some heat on the police department, where he's kind of going a little off book, going a little bit more bending the rules and doing the excessive force thing, which ends up getting someone off in the DeMarco clan from being prosecuted. So it's like that whole thing where he is kind of putting pressure on, but at the same time, when it really isn't, where it's a little bit more low profile, is not getting all the heat and everything, he's very much endorsing McCain to go ahead and do whatever it takes. But you'll see as the film goes on that there is twists and turns, and people end up being not exactly who they appear to be, but it's that very interesting sort of trusting dynamic between them, that there is friction, but there's also a certain amount of trust between the two characters to actually go ahead and do what is seemingly necessary to be done. But you'll see a great turn with Lance Henriksen in this film, where he gets to be a lot more sleazy, a lot more of just a real kind of piece of scum in a certain way, and to see a little bit more of a ruthless side come out of the character, and just like really damn good performance from that. I just saw, again, everyone here is so charismatic. They add so much great stuff to the roles. There's a little bit of swagger in him later on in the film, and just a lot of different things that is great performance from Lance Henriksen. Really just adds so much more to this character of Chief Devlin as this film goes on, and just great turn, great dynamic, great versatility with him as well. And someone I was really impressed with was Burt Young in this film, that, yeah, know him primarily from the Rocky films, and gotta love Paulie, but it's really great when I get to see Burt Young do something that's completely different from what I've seen before. And obviously he's been Paulie in a couple of sleazy roles on Law and Order, playing usually convicted pedophile or something like that on SVU or whatnot. But seeing him in this role as a ruthless, merciless DeMarco crime family boss in this thing, man, he sells intimidation factor in this film. I was very impressed. Even though he has some very limited screen time in the film, man, the guy hits it. Dead on the fucking mark with this performance. I just see him in this role just like he's as solid as anyone you've ever seen in a sort of crime boss type of role and whatnot, like a Robert Prosky or a Christopher Walken or Albert Brooks in Drive or something like that. He just comes off as tough and merciless, but he also has a very interesting sort of final scene in the film where you see a complete sort of turn and whatnot. He's afraid in the face of death and everything, so it's a very interesting, a little bit more dimensional type of role in that thing. It's not so one note. You see a little bit of something different in there, but just like the fact that he kills a guy by stabbing him in the ear with a pen. This guy is ruthless. This guy is just cutthroat as hell. There's just like, there's just absolutely there's no humanity in this character. There's no remorse or whatnot. This guy is just like, he goes ahead and he has cops killed, beaten up and everything. It's just like, this guy is absolutely, again, another seedy, sleazy, just a guy that you just want to see taken down in a certain way. You understand why the character of Terry McCain is so adamant about taking this guy down, that he is such a terrible piece of trash in this city that is corrupting everything, poisoning the whole city in a certain way with his crime family and everything. Burt Young does a fantastic job with his limited amount of work he has to put forth in this role, and he absolutely hits it dead on the market every single second he goes forth in it. But also on the flip side of things, you've got the fantastic Tony Todd, who's a guy I've had the highest regard for a extremely long period of time, not just Candyman. I've seen him in so many different things where he shows an amazing, dynamic, wide, eclectic range of talent, that this guy is an amazingly talented actor that just does not, he deserves so much more than just being a genre talent. He deserves to be such a A-list type of actor with the talent that he has. And in this role of Frankie, the partner of Terry McCain, he just adds, again, charisma to the role, but also a fantastic, wonderful quality overall that is a character with a lot of emotion to show in this film, that he has conviction, he has a very good chemistry, he has a very much a sort of compassionate type of side to him, that even though you see in certain moments in the film that he has a certain greed to him, he has a certain unscrupulous nature in certain parts, he also has a great conflict later on in this film balancing between his loyalty and the sort of more, again, unscrupulous type of temptations he has, and the alliances that he's made throughout the whole film. Just very interesting type of stuff with how he portrays his character, and just the fact that so many of these great talents elevate the material that is, again, fairly familiar type of stuff, nothing fantastically new or whatnot, but you get the right actor into a role and just brings so much more emotion and depth and everything else out of it. It just elevates the material to such a greater level overall that, again, lower quality talent makes the film much flatter, but you bring someone like Tony Todd in, who just has so much to give in so many different roles. The guy just brings so much more depth and so much more emotion to this character of Frankie that I just absolutely loved every second that he had to put on screen again. But even James Earl Jones, who also has some fairly limited screen time, still brings heart, humanity. He still brings a great sense of enjoyment to the film. I just thought he just did a solid job, that even though he might have been only on the film for maybe a couple of days, no way does he phone it in. Not what I would expect James Earl Jones to ever phone in a performance. The guy is a fantastic actor. Like everyone else here, just brings everything you expect from that warmth that you really like from James Earl Jones in a role like this, portraying McCain's friend in the jazz club and everything. Wonderful performance. Everyone across the board in the film does a high quality performance that just brings so much more to the table than just what you'd expect reading from the script. Just great stuff. I think they just cast this film absolutely perfectly and got a director in there who just, like I said, doesn't have a lot notable credits to his name. Definitely showed that he was able to bring everyone together in a very tight, cohesive fashion to bring out all the depth that this story and everything, all these characters were capable of bringing forth to make this a very interesting and regularly compelling type of story. And talking about this story in this film, that I'm a native of the suburbs of Chicago, and seeing a film that deals with the corruption of politics and the cops and everything of Chicago really comes through very authentically in this film. That it seems like, for whatever reason, Thomas Ian Griffith had a certain predilection to writing that stuff very well. Even though he was born in Connecticut and everything, he doesn't really seem to have any natural ties to Chicago. Really seems to understand the mechanics of how all that type of stuff works in Chicago. That, let's just say, that a lot of this stuff is very much true, and there's not a lot of exaggeration here in the corruption and politics and all that type of stuff throughout the system. But regardless of that, this is a very well put together story that I think, adding all the corruption and deceit and betrayal and like, don't really know who exactly is to be trusted in the film, that you definitely get a certain light sense of paranoia, and just like Terry McCain at a certain point just like doesn't know who to trust and decides not to trust anyone, so he has to go at it himself in a typical sort of action movie vein. But it's very much satisfying that type of way, that I think the plot moves along in a very interesting type of fashion, that at the beginning it very much is a standard sort of cop thriller where you got a cop who's trying to take down the mob and kind of do whatever it takes sort of thing, as action films go. But it sort of weaves its way into a revenge thriller, and then becomes the sort of conspiracy type of thing with all the corruption and all the type of stuff going on. So it's like it interweaves various little plot threads and develops and changes as it goes along. And it's a very interesting and very well put together type of story. But I think the only major downfall of the whole thing is that you don't really get that great sort of adversary the film really could use to really kind of make it more intense overall. That you never really see the character of Terry McCain really kind of go up against a really powerful, badass adversary in this film. That he does a lot of one-on-one fights, kicking people in the face and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of gunfights as well. So it's a lot of physical demands on him, but just the fact that you don't get, like, at the end of the film, there's not really a great sort of fight. There's not a great climax of the film where things seem like there's a great sense of peril or danger or whatnot. Just like, it seems fairly standard and typical. So it's like, it could have used something more like that to be just like a definite statement. If New Line Cinema was really serious about trying to make Griffith into that star, probably maybe should have suggested something a little bit more intense at some point in time. Just like solidify him, show exactly how intense, how much badassery you can get out of Thomas Ian Griffith as an action star overall. But it ends as a fairly decent thriller. But you know, the action of this film is really well put together. It all is very well shot and solidly choreographed. I think the cinematography in this film was very well done. That it, again, it has a high quality sheen to it overall, that it feels like this is a good scale type of film that was shot on location in Chicago. So you get a lot of that aesthetic very strongly in the film, that adds to the quality of it overall. That doesn't go and try to shoot things in Toronto or someplace else and try to mimic it in a cheap type of fashion. This is shot in Chicago with a lot of landmarks on display in the background. A lot of these locations just look really damn good, like when you get into a high-rise type of hotel and you just see the city sprawling out in the background and everything. Just like a lot of the good quality is on screen with the locations used, the cinematography at hand, and definitely the action just really delivers on a lot of good levels. That, again, you do get the martial arts physical stuff, but there's some great gunfights and a little bit of car chase type of action that I think that is very well executed on so many different levels. I think it's just nice to see an action film that is composed in this type of way, instead of a lot of the kinetic stuff you get in a lot of different action movies, even throughout late 90s or something like that. Just like as the things got more modern up to this point in time, we get a lot more stuff that is a little bit more kinetic, a little more shaky, and a lot of quick editing. It's nice to see a nice action sequence that is cut together conservatively with a lot of stable shots. It just works very well to allow the actors and stunt people to really kind of work the physicality out and have that kind of carry a certain intensity with the entire sequence and whatnot. Just thought The film just has a nice variety of action sequences that are all solidly put together. I think they're fairly well satisfying, and just overall, just like it's a decent film. I thought the music of this film, from Charles Bernstein, who you would know as the guy who composed the music for Nightmare on Elm Street, puts together a very solid, if not sort of fairly typical, sort of early 90s hard drive-in type of action movie score that very much fits very well with the film. Just like nice hearing something different from Bernstein. And just overall, I think Excessive Force is a good watch. It is a film that I think deserved a little bit better. I mean, it wasn't excellent. Like I said, there could have been a few more points where the action was more bombastic, because it has very little bombast and used a little bit more sort of strength in the sort of adversaries that McCain would have had to face down in the film that create more intense, perilous action. But there's just a lot of good action in the film, great performances, a lot of charismatic, dimensional type of actors that just add so much more to the roles. And just like overall, I think they elevate the script and elevate the material and put together with a very solid director apparently to make a very fun, interesting, and just good action thriller. I thought the film is a very satisfying time, if not have a ending that is not terribly sort of great punctuation, but it's nice and fun and everything. So it's like, could have been better here and there. It's not fantastic, but I still think it's very well recommended. And it was not easy for me to end up finding this film on short notice. It's easily available on Amazon, but had to drive around to a lot of different stores to find the one copy in the entire area that would actually service me in making this video for you guys. So a lot of miles put on, and I should have just chose my first instincts and would have saved myself some mileage. So good tip there. Hunting for videos, go with your first instinct and try to find it there. So that's what I gotta say for Excessive Force. And I've also seen Cracker Jack, which is his direct-to-video sort of die-hard clone for Griffith, which was kind of fun, but obviously terribly unoriginal. Very highly derivative, but it just kind of indulges itself in its cheesy B-movie type of stuff. And if you've seen the Cinema Snob episode of it from a few years ago, you'll definitely know how fun that film can be. And film Hollow Point, even following after that, was a completely very zany type of ride in a certain way. Total sort of action buddy comedy type of thing that just a little bit off the deep end, but still kind of entertaining too. But certainly interested in trying to track down another film he did called Ulterior Motives, released this same year, but only ever released on Laserdisc and VHS, so maybe a little bit longer to actually find that, but we'll see. Whatever the case, might be just my own personal viewing, but I gotta be wrapping up here because I gotta be working on Forever Horror Month, which I've already started production on a few reviews, and let's just say I'm getting the jump start on it, and I'm very excited to get going, but probably get Chronicles of Riddick also reviewed for you guys. And before I wrap things up, if you are a fan of Thomas Ian Griffith, if you've seen Excessive Force or any of his other films, I'd definitely like to hear what you guys think about him as an action star and what he possibly brought to a lot of different roles. Like I said, some villainous turns in some higher profile films really kind of also added to my awareness of him. And probably first saw him, Karate Kid Part 3, but then John Carpenter's Vampires, and I thought he did fantastic jobs in both films. So I just think he was a very talented actor who's still working today and still does a lot of writing too, screenwriting for television and film. So it's like, I think the guy's a highly talented individual who just, again, martial arts and acting and writing, I thought the guy just brings a lot of good solid qualities to the table, and just like I think he deserved a whole lot better. I thought he should have been pushed a little harder into the mainstream to get some higher profile, better films for himself under his belt. But regardless of that, it is what it is, and it's like really good fan of this guy. I thought he just does a lot of good work. So I'd like to hear your comments about this film or any other Thomas Ian Griffith films that you've seen, and just thumbs up if you enjoyed what you saw here. And regardless of anything else, I'll enjoy having you guys stick around here and check things out. Be wrapping up the month in with Chronicles of Riddick and maybe something else, but definitely working very hard to get Forever Horror Month up on its feet early, so I don't have to race beyond my limitations in one month to get everything done that I want. But let's just say hopefully maybe I'll have a little bit more of a tease after I get a few more videos produced and ready to upload once October arrives. So that's enough for me. It's getting very late here shooting this video. So thanks guys for watching. Always appreciate it. And your comments or your likes or your sharing the leaks around, always highly appreciate. So I can get out of here. Thanks guys for watching. So take care. Bye bye.